I feel like this is one of those moments for CJ Stroud that even as awful as he's been in the second half of the season, if he can have a great playoff game, it washes away a lot of the stench that he's been carrying for the year.
Couldn't agree more.
Do you think that CJ Stroud is going to perform well against the Chargers? This is a great defense.
I agree. The Chargers are a pretty good defense. I think we have our up and downs at this table. I think I lean more into the great because I do like the players they have. I like Khalil Mack. I like Joey Bosa, Derrick James. They have some stars over there.
Taheem Henley.
Yeah, and then your cornerback.
Your boy Taheem. No, you got to respect Taheem. He's had a great season.
No, for sure. I think it's going to be a challenge for sure. All I'm asking for, CJ Stroud, just play great. That's all I'm asking for. I'm asking for you to do. I'm asking for you to walk off the field winning, and whatever happens after that, happens after that. I do think this Chargers team causes a lot of problems. I think this Texans offensive line is still down in the dumps. I'm pretty sure Nico Collins is played, but if you can take him out the game, what else does the Texans have? They can't really run the ball. And CJ Stroud has looked rattled. He's looked a little bit uncomfortable, so that's something that is going to be hard to do. One thing you do know about NFL playoffs, one game, everything is 0-0 at this point. You start off fresh. You do have home field advantage, so that's something to go in your favor.
Fair.
And I do think the Chargers aren't this unstoppable team that just wins in the playoffs. This is a team that's also...
Say the opposite.
This is a team that's also... We can't forget blew a 27-point lead to a Jacksonville team, so they are also trying to prove something. But the Texans, they've been pretty bad for like 10 weeks. So, to just go into the playoffs and completely change that is really hard. You really value the teams that, in football especially, you really value the teams that have been, on a kind of a hot streak going into the playoffs. We've seen that with Green Bay last year. But I think the Chargers will win. Am I going to root for the Texans as fuck? Absolutely, no doubt in my mind. If they win, I would be ecstatic. I think CJ Stroud, like you mentioned, this is the opportunity for him to, remind people that, have forgotten that he's really great, that he's still one of those dudes. This is definitely a moment where he can put the team on his back. I just don't know if he can because it's just so much fighting against him. And then you're playing a pretty great defense in the Chargers. Offensively, I really want to see how the Chargers look. I want to see if their offense is going to be extremely explosive, high-powered. This is a team that wants to go far. This isn't a team that just wants to be a playoff team. The Chargers have expectations, and, next round's only going to get harder, because I believe they'll probably play the Chiefs, if I'm not mistaken, because we're pretty much set in stone on Bills, Ravens seeing each other. So, they're definitely trying to get their kinks off. If they want to win this game, they're not taking the Texans lightly, but I definitely have the Chargers. I think they'll win this game. They're just a better team. I would love for the Texans to win, but no, I can't go in here being biased. Told myself 2025, I got to chill off the
postseason. He locks in.
Yeah, I got to lock in.
Jimmy Butler over here.
Yeah, but Garland. I do think the Chargers is just a better team right now, so I got the Chargers.
I'll say this:
D-fucking-G.
Both defenses statistically have been great this season. You look at what the Chargers have been doing, but you also, very quietly, I know a lot of the conversation for the Texans is centered around that offense, centered around CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, Joe Mixon, and of course, Bobby Slowick not being a great play caller and the offensive line being as poor as it is. But on the opposite side of that, just one spot underneath in terms of EPA per play from the Chargers is the Houston Texans. Houston Texans have one of the better in terms of drop back EPA, rush EPA. They're top 5 in both categories. So that's one thing that I look at this game, and I think that it'll be a little bit more defensive heavy than we are anticipating on both sides. I feel like people highlight the Chargers defense, but when we talk about the Texans, it's a lot about their offense and their woes. I'm going to take the Chargers in this situation because I favor Herbert over CJ, especially this season, but I think it's going to be a very close game right down to the wire. Herbert needs this. Of course, CJ needs this as well. Like you mentioned, Joel, to start, this could be one of those where CJ just balls out. Nobody cares that the offense struggled for the last 10 weeks, like we've mentioned. But all in all, I just trust Jim Harbaugh, his ability to come into this game, to game plan and ultimately come away with this W and move on to the next round. Texans have just been playing too inconsistently for my liking for way too long. That game against Baltimore, I know Baltimore's been playing at a different level recently, particularly on the defensive side, but scoring 0 offensive points, it just cannot happen. It simply cannot happen. And coming into this game, I understand that it is the playoffs, different atmosphere, you're at home. you're not playing against the Ravens. You're playing against the Chargers, who obviously are an inferior team to the Baltimore Ravens. But regardless, I favor the Chargers just a little bit more in this game.
Yeah, I got the Chargers in this game too. Did you guys see what Rex Ryan said about the
What did you say?
Chargers? He said the Chargers basically have a bye week this week. Like,
Oh, shit.
Texans shouldn't show up.
See, that's insane.
What's even more crazy is a reporter asked Joe Mixon if he heard about it. So I feel like it's a crazy thing to tell a player,
Good. Now Joe Mixon delivers the message. This got me wavering a little bit.
Got a little more pride.
Low-key
in him.
Changing the pick.
He went in
Imagine of that
He went in the
alone.
locker room like, yo, Rex Ryan just violated us, man. We got locked in.
But I got the Chargers in this game. You were talking, right? Since that Jets game, they're 4-4. Their wins are really bad wins. I mean, they're over bad teams, and even some of them are still pretty close. Since the Jets lost to the Lions, but they beat the Cowboys 34-10. Who the Cowboys were, they're a competitive team, even though backup quarterback. They beat the Jaguars 23-20 with Mac Jones. They beat the Dolphins 20-12 at home. Then they lost back-to-back games to the Ravens and Chiefs. Can't blame them there. And won Week 18 against the Titans 23-14 with some backups in. So this is a team that, although they finished with double-digit wins, they won the division. They don't feel like a division winner to me. This feels like a wild card team that gets in at the 7th seed just because a couple tiebreakers went their way. They do not feel like any sort of dominant team. They do not feel like the team even of last year, who of course won their first playoff game against the Cleveland Browns before losing to the Baltimore Ravens. But right now, the Chargers are the better team to me. I think what we've seen over these last 3 weeks is the offense is getting back together. They went through a pretty major lull for about a month or so, especially when J.K. Dobbins was out. But over these last 3 weeks against Denver, who else they played? Just had it up now. I'm brain farting who they played. They played Denver. They played the Raiders and the Patriots, who not the best competition.
Denver got it. That was a great performance.
They went how many weeks in a row here where they scored 17 points against the Falcons, 17 points against the Chiefs, 17 points against the Buccaneers, and a lot of that had to do with J.K. Dobbins. And then the Broncos game came around, which that was J.K.'s last game out, so he wasn't even in there. They scored 34 points, and they put up 40 points and 34 against the Raiders, and of course J.K. is back, and that's the biggest thing for me. Having J.K. Dobbins back, he's so much better than Gus Edwards. I don't know where J.K. Dobbins ranks in terms of running backs, right? I don't think he's a top 10 back. I don't even know if he's a top 15 back. But Gus Edwards is bad. I know I talk shit about him, and then he had a great game. So maybe take is over because I'm talking shit on him again. But having J.K. back just gives you a bit more pop in that run game. And the fact that Ladd McConkey is playing as well as he's been playing second half of the season. Of course, Quentin Johnson having a pretty quiet 750-yard season. Salute to him because I thought this man would be damn near out the league by this time. But right now, they feel like the more complete team. Trust the coaching staff more. Trust the coach more. Although the Texans defense is good, I still favor the Chargers defense, and I favor the Chargers offense. So there's a world that it happens. Maybe one of you guys can convince me on that world. Doesn't sound like it, but I got the Chargers here.
The Texans feel like a team that's scrambling right now. They signed Deontay Johnson because Tank Dell went out with injury. Stephon Diggs went out to injury earlier in the season. Deontay Johnson is supposed to be somebody that maybe boosts up the wide receiver core, but he was cut from the Ravens. They didn't want him. A perennial Super Bowl contender said, this guy cannot help us, which gives me concern of how quickly he's picking up this Texans playbook, number one, how in sync he's going to be. Is he even going to play? Outside of Nico Collins, they don't have any other reliable receivers that C.J. Stroud can consistently target, and they can't generate any runs on early downs. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL. And the Chargers, they're an average run defense, but they play with light boxes. So it's almost by design why they're average, because they don't sell out for the run. Yep. They're more worried about the pass. But they've still been average because Poona Ford has really been awesome up front, and Khalil Mack has been one of the best run defenders in the league this year. So I think the Chargers are going to do much of the same of what teams have been doing to the Texans. You're going to, on first and second down, see them run the ball inefficiently. It's going to force CJ into third and long situations. This has been what they have been every single week. And CJ Stroud, progressively through the year, early on, he was really thriving in those situations. But then he was put in it throughout the entire season, and it has consistently regressed because their protection plans, this has not been good. And you're going up against a defense coordinator in Jesse Minter, who that's one of his specialties, generating pressure, confusing the quarterbacks at the line. So I think both these defenses are awesome. And I like that you shout out the Texans defense, because the Texans defense is the only reason why the Texans have a chance in this game.
No doubt.
They're second in pressure percentage. And if Rashawn Slater is not 100%, that matchup with Danielle Hunter is going to be a rough one. But you mentioned the slow start with the Chargers offense after J.K. Dobbins went out. Herbert was also hurt, and his ankle was
He's been hurt
swollen.
kind of all season. Yeah.
He's been dealing with these injuries all year, but now he's his most mobile. So even if the offensive line can't hold up the best, he's able to get out of harm's way. And the fact that their best receiver doesn't play on the outside where it gives Stingley a chance to take him away. Ladd McConkey is in the slot. That's where he's going to do most of his damage. It gives me a lot of optimism for how the Chargers can attack this defense. And I got them. I got Herbert winning his first playoff game in this one. I think he's going to have a great, fantastic day.
I'm rooting for the Chargers because I want the Herbert playoff stuff to go away. He's a top 5 quarterback. I don't know who thinks he's not a top 5 quarterback. The only people that think that is because he hasn't done shit in the playoffs. And I get it. He blew a 27-point lead, get the interceptions that were thrown, all of that. But he's so damn good that he needs at least the playoff win to get that off his back. Also, this is probably the biggest mismatch in terms of defensive coordinator versus offensive coordinator. I think Bobby Slowick is out of his league going up against Jesse Minter and what he's been able to do with this defense. Just going across all of the games, I don't know if there's a bigger mismatch. Maybe I'm forgetting about something right now, but right now, Bobby Slowick, I don't know how he's getting head coaching interviews, but it's been a pretty dreadful season this year.